You know, Magic the Gathering really didn't need another piece of complexity. I think in recent times that's really shown its head with the legality of cards. Why we don't just have silver bordered, gold bordered, and black bordered. How the cross melding of some of this even creates legality with the unlegal cards in black border formats. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, with the complication of some of the black border cards now not being legal due to acorn symbols, and with Commander being the front-facing format of Magic the Gathering and being able to rule zero in certain cards. I wanted to go over a recent update from the Commander Rules Committee talking about their silver bordered project and their take on silver border, and how to kind of really align our views on the legality, the rules zeroing, and just kind of the long-term discussion around the Commander's format stance on black border, silver border, and I guess gold border counts as well in this discussion. Now, this is going to go over the article itself that recently just released today. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and maybe before we hop into it, let me know in the comment section what you think about silver and gold border cards in terms of your Commander games. I personally own a couple of gold border cards that existed in those original championship decks that are a little bit more expensive or were harder to get at the time, and I have them in, well, gold border, and so my Playgroup allows me to play them, you know, like whatever, you just have a copy of the card. And you know me, on this channel we are very proxy forward when it comes to Commander, but is that something that you're cool with? Is that something that you would allow in your Commander group? And if or if not, let me know in the comment section down below. But let's hop right into the article and talk about the silver bordered project. In our recent quarterly update, I dropped a bit of a teaser for a project we're working on one that I really like the idea of providing more transparent look into what we're doing. But based on some feedback I've received, it appears I could have been a lot clearer when describing what it's all about. And that's what this is about. So I'm also going to link the quarterly update that released, I believe it was the 29th. I think it was here. Yeah, there you go. July quarterly update. Rather than waiting until the next quarterly update, September 30th, I'd like to lay out a bit more information about this project, where it came from and what it is and isn't. I'll also address some of the more common questions I've received over the past 2 weeks. At this moment, Commander card pool consists of all regulation-sized Magic cards publicly released by Wizards of the Coast, other than those with silver borders, gold borders, or an acorn-shaped security stamp. And this is kind of what I was talking about here, where it's not so much just about the card frame anymore, and in an effort to create I guess want for the Unfinity sets and including black borders, like you now have to include acorn shaped security stamps, right? Like you have black border cards like the arena specific cards like Rusco, and there's the bird that conjures up the power 9. With these cards being in black border, it's not so much as cut and dry as to the legality of these cards. And I think that's honestly to Magic's detriment. There's been so much of a stance for so many years that we have to make decisions that are casual forward. We have to make a group of decisions on bannings or erratas, right? Like the companion errata was so controversial because it wasn't necessarily casual friendly in a certain stance, where people could open up older packs, open up like a Loros, and it wouldn't have the most updated companion rules, whereas now you can get copies of Loros with that updated printing. And so situations like this really kind of line up with where black border cards are now having acorn stamps, albeit in this specific sense, the Unfinity cards that are black bordered are, I believe, playable, and then the mystery booster cards are a little bit harder to come by in the wild. So maybe the argument for that is that you won't come across them too much. But anyway, just my little piece on that. This project will not change the legality of any cards with silver borders or acorn shaped security stamps. So I guess it's just gonna be some information. So where did it come from? I've seen a lot of speculation about our motivations for doing this, so I want to be clear, this project was not forced to us by Mark Rosewater or Wizards of the Coast. Everyone take off your tinfoil hat. In fact, they didn't want to know about it until a week before we started. This project was my idea. I started thinking about it a year ago. Several real people have reached out to me to ask why their silver border cards aren't legal in Commander. And I've heard some of the more casual focused folks on the Commander advisory group that they've heard the same from their communities. I emphasize they're real people because I've seen a lot of people suggest that nobody was asking for more silver bordered support, or silver bordered cards are universally hated. Silver bordered enthusiasts do exist if you don't have any at your LGS. Their arguments generally fall into one of two categories. Commander talks a lot about how it wants to be fun, casual formats that doesn't take itself too seriously, and many ideas and mechanics that used to be silver bordered are now printed in black bordered, sometimes one for one. This is actually a pretty good example of this. Bearing Glory. So at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control no permanents other than Bearing Glory and you have no cards in your hand, you win the game. And pretty much the same thing as the Chi Sands alone. I mean, it's an enchantment, no cards in your hand. It's just a name and difference. So it's creating these kind of weird effects, kind of like going with the name, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait, there's nothing actually, this card isn't doing actually anything too crazy, we can just print it as that. And the Commander format being a bit more casual, I think, is important, because rule zeros and conversations are so important. I think where this gets lost in translation is the idea of power levels and trying to communicate that, and I think that's going to be an ongoing issue, especially with the increasing efficiency of stuff like precons. I think there's a lot of power levels that were a bit more cut and dry. I think the hardest power levels now are probably like 5, 6, 7, like really trying to communicate what 5, 6, 7 means based on your own play group, going from LGS to LGS, like the power levels of that. But when it comes to rule zeroing something in, having that conversation about proxies, having that conversation about like combos, like this is all very important. I'm the type of Commander player that will let you do kind of anything. I'm not going to stop you from playing land destruction. I'm not going to stop you from doing this, doing that. It's just you have to be okay with me potentially treating you like the arch enemy if you play Armageddon on turn 2 or something like that, and all of a sudden your lands are like, you know, your lands are good. Or if you start strip mining looping us from like, you know, turn 3 or whatever, like you have to be okay with me doing that, knowing what you are doing is not okay. But I will let you do it, I will let you combo off, but I'll then probably focus you or try and kind of mulligan the hands that do stop you. Anyway, when people approach me about SB cards in Commander, I think I'm just going to try and say SB cards here, or silver cards. The most common topics are, in no particular order, Host Augment, and General Surgeon General Commander, A Cornelia, Kark's Other Thumb, and other coin flipping cards and contraptions. So Host Augment, A Cornelia, I'm not sure about this card. Kark's Other Thumb is kind of a funny one, and contraptions. My personal opinion, people ask me to legalize silver border cards. It reminds me of December 2017 when the RCU temporarily legalized them for 6 weeks following the release of Unstable. I was writing an article at the time, and here's what I wrote on my decision. I remember this. This was a, content creators love this. This was like free farming. As I'm free farming with this article, this was free farming for Commander folks. But this was 2017. This was a different time. Commander wasn't maybe as front facing as it was now. The intent of this rule change, so this is Jim LePage's personal belief on the silver situation being legal for 6 weeks. The intent of this rule was to generate hyper on the fun unset in around the first unset in nearly 15 years. Sheldon Menery explained the change was motivated by a desire among the rules committee members to allow players to play cards you can't. Rest in peace, by the way, to Sheldon here. You can't play in other formats. His rationale behind making the change is that it would allow people to try out cards that would normally be for a defined period of time in order to determine whether or not they want the house rules for them to be legal within the own playgroups for a very long period of time. Now, I like this. You know why? Because this actually, I think in a lot of ways, probably had a net positive effect on the format because it opened up conversations for so many people because there's precedent for it. Now it's saying these cards are legal. You have to talk to your kind of group about them, or you can talk to your group about them. Here is your permission slip. It was kind of like the hall monitor pass, right? Where you can now go to your playgroup and be like, look, Wizards of the Coast wants to make it legal for 6 weeks. It's only 6 weeks. And then you play it a little bit, you only play maybe 1 or 2, your friend group's like, okay, you know what, that card's not too bad, maybe we can open up more cards, and like it opens up more discussions. I think honestly this was a net positive decision at the time. There are fairly 2 major problems with the way this change was implemented. The first being that Commander is played at large events like GPs, and the announcement caused confusion and outrage towards tournament organizers who had explained to paying customers their decision to either adhere to or deviate from the official rules of the format of the event they were hosting. Was that really a problem? That sounds kind of dumb. TOs kind of need to figure that out. The second was that the similar result would have been accomplished with a slightly lighter touch. Although Commander is often known for its wacky interactions, not everyone who plays Commander enjoys the incredibly unique experience of playing with silver bordered cards. The negative reaction towards the decision was entirely foreseeable given the community's collective repulsion towards chaos mechanics. I firmly believe that given the soapbox that Sheldon and the other members of the Rules Committee have, an article extolling the virtues of playing with unset cards and a sincere personal recommendation to try and would have been enough. Right, so instead of creating an official legality, they could have just said, please try them out. It's not a hall pass. It's not a go to the bathroom pass to pass the hall monitor. Like, it's just you're allowed to. Like, the principal kind of announces like, okay, for today, or for the foreseeable future, let's just let the students ask the teacher and go to the washroom. You know, like let's just, you know, maybe they'll roam the halls, but maybe they'll do the good stuff as well, right? The rules committee would have been wise to consider the fact that changes to the official rules of the format affect everyone who plays with strangers, no matter how loudly they beat the house rules social construct drum of theirs. Okay, so my personal take on this. So I think there's a lot of people out there that are fair to want to curate their own personal experience, right? They don't want silver bordered cards. They don't want cards that aren't necessarily legal in the format itself. And I think for a lot of those people, especially under like a 7-8 power level, I think a lot of those people are being like, let me preface this. I'm gonna put a giant asterisk on this statement. I think a lot of those people are being babies about it. Let's be honest here. A lot of the reasons that these people have, especially for, again, power levels underneath 7 and 8, are that they, you know, it's just not legal. It's not something that I would purchase. It's not something you could play in constructed, blah, 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 blah. Grow up. Come on. Okay. Like, we can rule zero this stuff in. There's probably the same group of people that say, if you go infinite, you can only go like combo 5 times, or you can't play land destruction. Come on, just build better decks. Okay. Like, let's be honest here. When it comes to something like hating chaos, that I can fully understand as an archetype, because the end result of you playing that doesn't create a better play experience. A lot of times, a lot of play patterns that a lot of people don't like, and I've been thinking about making a video on this actually, where we should be looking to play experiences that create a net positive experience, and not one that just like, I did it because I could. Why not? Like, no. Okay, like there's a fine line to be playing here, and I think that kind of bleeds into stuff like Group Hug, where I've had some interactions with other commander shows where I've been expressed to me live on stream that, you know what, it's you know, maybe I wasn't playing Group Hug properly, maybe I wasn't doing this, doing that, and I was very much playing like a kind of version of Group Hug that was kind of assistive, right? Like, it was enabling. I would win if I wanted to, but it was kind of just trying to speed up the sake of the game, right? And I think a couple of people got frustrated, which I think wasn't fair at all. I think they could have had a better response to that. I think there was some comments made about, you know what, I'm not going to get salty about this. You know what, if y'all know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. It wasn't a fun experience for me, but I won't speak on that further. What I think in the end is that when it comes to certain archetypes and their viability and what they do in terms of a net positive gameplay pattern, I think that is okay to have a conversation about. Maybe you shouldn't play the chaos card because it's just cuz, right? Like, you don't have an actual way to win with the chaos card. But when it comes to banning silver bordered cards in lower power tables, a lot of them are perfectly fine. All they do is add some dice. I think a lot of people get frustrated because they add more time to the games, because when you're adding another element of shuffling, another element of dice, another element to track, board states get crazy. A lot of this comes with lower power tables because these are tables that don't run as many board wipes, don't run as many interactions, and once the one board wipe happens, a lot of people just roll their eyes, they get frustrated, and it probably just comes down to bad deck building. A lot of these cards honestly probably could be allowed. Like, you don't need to be playing cards that conjure things. A lot of times these unset cards are just kind of funny. They don't really do anything that necessarily breaks the game. It's just on the player to be like kind of open-minded, right? Like, if a player can come at me with all the intricacies and nuances of like Urza Saga, they can play silver bordered cards. But to be clear, I'm one of the folks who doesn't enjoy the incredibly unique experience of playing silver bordered cards. The style of humor and quirky gimmicks just never really resonated with me, which is fair. I've gone into it with an open mind, tried it, and determined it's just not a product for me. See, now that's fair. Now with someone like Jim LePage, I can trust, because Jim is the type of person that's played a lot of Commander and has put in the work to do so, especially being part of the Commander Rules Committee. The average person, I can't believe you. I can't believe that you put in the enough work to actually try and see if it's like, people will just look at something and they'll be like, it's not for me, without actually trying it. You know, when you try and recommend a show to someone, and like, it's one thing to be like, oh, I just don't have the time to watch the show, which is perfectly fine. But they'll just be like, it's not really for me. When it's like, why would I recommend it to you then? I don't know. Like, I believe that you would like it. Why don't you try it? Right? Like, I don't know. People are dumb. People are dumb. Clarity and communication. Beyond my own personal version of the cards themselves, silver bordered cards as a whole are a bit of a challenge. And as of today, there are 800 silver bordered or acorn stamp cards, including things like Wizards of the Coast Holiday and SDCC promos. These cards exist on a really broad spectrum in terms of playability, in terms of what they do to the game state, right? Like some of them could do perfectly normal things, and some of them could be like change all the consonants to vowels and other ways around. And you're just like, okay, let's not do that. So Laughing Hyena, a green and 1 for a 2/2 gotcha. Whenever an opponent laughs, you may say gotcha. If you do, return Laughing Hyena from your graveyard. On one hand, you've got designs that are really obnoxious, especially in multiplayer settings. These cards can be pretty toxic when you're trying to cultivate a positive social experience. Right, so you have this situation where the card may not necessarily be like particularly powerful, but you're constantly having someone say gotcha, gotcha, gotcha to return like a 2/2 back, and like everyone just stops like laughing, right? Like it just ruins the environment altogether. This is pretty obnoxious, and it's pretty much similar to the whole like Ristic Study and Smothering Tide situation, where like, do you pay the one, do you pay the one, do you pay the one, and then you have to make this universal statement of like, I'm gonna laugh, or like I'm just not gonna laugh, or like I every time I laugh you can't say gotcha, like that's just it, right? Like you have to make statements like that. On the other hand, there's some really interesting creative designs. Some of these are compelling and popular that they form the foundation for future card designs in tournament legal sets. So this is kind of the augment thing, and this is what I mean, like stuff like this, like augment is like pretty cool, right? It's like a pretty cool design thing. You have to play with like other augment cards, but when it comes to silver border cards, it's not always immediately evident which ones are babies and which ones are bathwater. And someone says whether they can and when someone asks whether or not they can play silver border cards in their commander decks, it's often met with groans and eye rolls. People, myself included, assume that they're going to be shot with Nerf guns or have to sing something or high five a stranger. That's perfectly fair. A lot of these mechanics were kind of done so in a draft environment where you have cards that are like, if you manage to sneak this on the battlefield and you attack within, your opponent doesn't notice, then like it gets like +50. I'm making something up, but I'm pretty sure there was a card out there that was like you could like sneak it into the battlefield or something like that, and then yeah, shooting someone with Nerf guns, or you have to sing something. Yeah. Short of a PowerPoint presentation, it's difficult for silver enthusiasts to quickly communicate the type of experience they're bringing to the table. Now, the rules committee role. In April 2024, we updated the philosophy document to highlight the 3 pillars of the format. The new document lays out our responsibilities and serves as a roadmap for us. At its core, Commander is social. Each game is a journey that players share, where every player is considerate of the experience of everyone involved. Magic is a competition in the same sense that all games are competitions, but whenever the act of competing comes in conflict with the social atmosphere, Commander prioritizes and protects the social atmosphere, which I think is important too. Because although I made those comments about how, you know, people need to grow up and do all this and do that, I think that at the end of the day, that just comes down to communication. I think there's a lot of people out there that do have an aversion to certain things, but that's because they haven't tried something. They haven't given it the actual effort to think about it. It's just slightly annoying to them, so they don't bother. It's kind of like when your old, you know, kind of grandparents are stuck in their ways and they don't want to learn how to use their iPad. They just want you to go like stand up, change the TV and like all that stuff. They have the capacity to learn, but it's just not important to them, so they don't learn. And I think that's where this kind of lies. I think that like that in my personal feeling, without any evidence or data, my personal experience is that a lot of people kind of fall under this category. And which is why I think this being social is really important, because these conversations are really important, like challenging people, like, why don't you want to play Chaos? Like verbal, like word it to me. Like I want you to speak it to me, not just we can't play, we can't do this. No. I want you to in words communicate to me, because this is a social experience, even in the competitive sense, even in a experience where famous streamers are yelling at 14-year-olds. For those of you who know, you know, for inexcusable behavior like that. It's all about communication. It's all about communication with yourself, and whether or not you find the help that you do find after the fact. It's all at the end of the day about how you use your words and how you communicate the issues that you have that kind of come down to this. So I think, like, you know, Jim has put in the effort, tried it, and it's ultimately not for him. The average player, I honestly don't believe you. I think you're just being ignorant to a lot of cards that would actually enhance your experience playing the Commander format. Encouraging positive communal experiences where people can bond over shared experiences of gaming. Yes, the big moments of, you know, I played this, but then they played this, but because of this interaction with this other land that the opponent had, this actually makes this like not possible. And you're like, whoa, and you're like, yeah, like big moments like that. Help players communicate their preferences and arrive at a shared set of expectations. This literally what I can't even, I didn't even read this. Literally what I just said. Help players communicate their preferences, arrive at a shared set of expectations. And that's not just, I don't want to play it. Why do you not? You literally, you owe this to us, right? And I think like we've gone too far as a society as to this whole idea of like, I don't owe someone an explanation. I don't believe that. We are inherently social creatures. There is a fine line to walk between what you owe to someone and what you don't. Yes, I didn't pay you to give you my give you an opinion. You might do that with someone like a newscast. You might do that with like a show that you go to someone. You might do that with me where you're paying for your time and listening to me blab on about something like this. But ultimately, you owe someone a reasoning for this, because you sat down and you said, I want to play a game with you. I want to spend the next hour, whatever amount of time with you. You owe me an explanation as to why my deck that I believe is fun, that maybe another player at the table believes is fun, but you don't think so. It's not just because you think it's dumb. It's not just because you think it's this. Like, you need to word it. You need to, like, a lot of Magic players lose the ability to communicate or just don't have it in general. And it's really unfortunate. And I think like, I don't know, like we shouldn't be like a communication game. Like we shouldn't just be a giant English class, but like a lot of Magic play, a lot of the views of what Magic the Gathering TCGs and nerddom could be a lot better if people just communicated better. People suck at communication, frankly. But thankfully, a lot of my experiences haven't been like that. But when it comes to thinking about folks who want to play A Cornelia, you know what? I'm gonna look this up. Where is A Cornelia? I'm gonna scryfall this. A Cornelia. This is the second time this has come up. Fashionable filter. Legendary scroll. Whenever you cast a spell with a squirrel in its art, you get an acorn counter. Whenever a squirrel you control enters or dies, you get an acorn counter. You can pay black and pay X acorn. Target creature gets minus X. Pay green, pay X. Target creature gets plus X. Okay, yeah, I mean, like, because, okay, I guess the condition of it is kind of funny because you need to go to like the art. So this wouldn't technically work with like shapeshifters, but would you rule zero that in as a shapeshifter? Because you could argue that is a shapeshifter, so that is also just a squirrel, but it's not actually a squirrel in the art. Would you argue that as well? Someone let me know in the comment section down below. Would you, if you played A Cornelia, would you let that A Cornelia player, would you allow yourself to play shapeshifters even though squirrels may not necessarily be in the art? It's a shapeshifter. Although, like, otherwise, if it wasn't the art, if it was just like squirrel in its type or something, and it was just the fun part was the acorn counter, I think it'd be perfectly fine. This is just another form of counter to like really track, but the art part is like the interesting part. Okay, all right. I would be open to allowing this in my group. I think that's perfectly fine. It fits within the boundaries of my understanding. When I think about folks who play A Cornelia or Surgeon General Commander, I don't see a problem that's solved by blanket legality chains that shoehorn silver border cards into the format. Rather, I see a communication problem that could be alleviated by using shared language. That's really what's at the core of the silver border project. Like, just communicate, folks. Just really, like, you need to sit down. And a lot of people, a lot of you that are here that don't know how to communicate, like, you need to sit down, and you owe that to your fellow Magic the Gathering player to learn how to communicate your beliefs, to communicate cleanly and soundly your issues with certain cards, so that once you hear that, like, you may change your belief as well, because you realize, like, oh, when I say it like that, it's actually kind of harsh, it's actually kind of rude, it's actually kind of X. Or you might be further strengthened, and it's like, oh, actually, you know what, I've kind of convinced myself even further. Like, I've created, after talking it out with myself, I've created like kind of like a counter argument where if someone was to say this, I now kind of articulated better. I'm like, yeah, that kind of solves that counter argument for that, and like blah blah blah, right? It helps further either solidify it or just kind of put it down into the ground here. We already use heuristics like this in Commander community in a number of ways. You generally don't have to describe your deck card by card. If you say you're playing CEDH or you're playing Stacks or you're playing Elf Ball, the terms themselves carry enough information that your opponent can make a quick, informed decision about the type of experience they're signing up for. I would consider it successful if the working group is able to come up with a manageable number of snappy, descriptive names to describe the group of cards that I'm seeing in the silver bordered card pool. If the names actually catch on and start seeing a regular use within the community, there may even be other applications for the type of framework that can help alleviate the clunky aspects of the pre-game discussions. So it's kind of, you know, I'm playing like, this isn't the term for it, but this could be kind of a soft way to allude to what they're saying is, you know, kind of dividing it in different categories, like the cards that are completely unusable, like high fives, and you got to sneak a card in, like those are, I'm using this is so hyperbolistic, but I'm using, that's not even a real word, by the way. I'm using the dumb silver border cards, and then I'm using this cool silver border cards, right? Like, is there a way where I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm playing silver border cards, but they're the cool ones? Or like I'm playing like a typal deck, but it's alpha ball, right? Like you see how that can be kind of like one for one. That's kind of what Jim is kind of going for here. So if there is a way to create some terminology or some type of communication method that can really describe that, then there could be some nuanced change or clarification in the stance around silver bordered, maybe even by the next quarterly update, or maybe in a future one. So Q&A, why start with silver bordered cards and not something more broadly applicable? We're relatively new to the working group projects like this. I wanted the problem statement to be something with relatively defined edges, and one that had some personal significance to the folks who are working on it. This is also not the only thing we're working on at the moment, but I can always share the details of other projects and future updates probably. Will I have to play against more silver border cards as a result of this? It's possible that more folks are likely to try, and it's reasonable chance that you might get to play them. The default position is these cards are still not legal, but it's one of those things where, you know, when you want to solve a cheating issue in a video game, it's very hard to solve that as maybe like a bigger creator when you're bringing attention to it, right? Like I'm thinking about like my Overwatch 2 content that I follow with Flats. Shout out to everyone that is an Overwatch player. Maybe comment down below your rank. I'm just like a gold plat scrub, okay? But Flats, he'll kind of do these videos talking about, oh, you know, aimbot cheater found, aimbot whatever, and he's a great personality, so the video ends up being good. But what it does is it just brings more eyes on the cheating, which might bring more people to go cheat. They might see, oh, it is this easy. Look, Flats the streamer is finding the cheats this way. Okay, when I get to cheat, I'm just not going to do this. And so it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like you're bringing more awareness to this, you're bringing this to the devs, especially as like a big creator at Flats's level. You might have devs kind of looking into this and bringing more attention to it, but then also the average player base that you're exposing this to would generally want to go and try these cheats. Now, silver border cards aren't necessarily cheats, but you're then going to have a higher number of people by putting out this article, trying this, exploring this, like planting the seed in their head that maybe we could explore some of these silver bordered options in decks. So will specific cards be considered specific? So will X cards be considered X category? The classification work is currently underway, and we plan on sharing the results with the Dustmorn quarterly update on September 3rd. This is going to be interesting. I'm excited to see where this lands. Are you looking at mystery booster unknown event playtest cards as part of this project? No. I guess because like those are like more defined. Like, wouldn't you have to look at them? Well, because they're acorn cards. They're acorn stamp cards. Are you looking at acorn stamp mystery? Okay, literally the next question. Are you looking at acorn stamp mystery booster cards? There are only 7 of these. They weren't part of the initial analysis because we didn't know about them until after we started, but we added them to list and they'll be part of the project. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So the first question is alluding to playtest cards. So playtest cards are like very clearly not okay. And then this is like acorn stamp. Okay. And there's only like 7 of them. That's interesting. There's only 7 that are like black border or something like that. Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Largely speaking, I like where the stance is going, that it's about communication. It's about having that conversation and again, further promoting that rule zero, that Commander is a social part of the game, that there is a level of competitiveness to it, but ultimately even in CDH, although it's about winning, there still is a social element to it. It's kind of like when you're playing like an 8, like a 9-10 power level, like you still want the social aspects of Commander, but in an understanding where people aren't just going to do chaos for the sake of chaos. They're not going to just do this just because they can. They're going to do something because it's going to help them win, but there still is that kind of back and forth. Maybe they make a deal once every so often, whatever. Like there still is that aspect of the games themselves. So I think that's really important. I really like this article for that. Silver border cards in general, again, I like the fact that they try to categorize them. There is a big difference between the ones that are good and aren't. I think in general, there should be a bigger open-mindedness to the ones that actually do fall like really close, if not exactly one for one, to the lines of cards that already exist. Like a Cornelia honestly is pretty close. I'm actually really interested. Again, like if you're this far in the video, please let me know in the comment section, like would you allow changelings in that deck? That's actually the most interesting part to me, because it's all about art, but then like the art kind of circumvents the changeling aspect of it, right? So, I mean, if you're already taking that step 1, would you take that step 2? It's like kind of 1A actually. It's like step 1 and then this is step 1A. It's not really step 2. Kind of an interesting discussion, but let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'll link this article down there as well. Let me know what you think about the Silver Border project and if you're excited for the update coming on September 30th.